Hi everyone, it's Derrick, and welcome to the Not So Grand Jury's first ever sidebar, which we are using as our nerdy lawyer code for a bonus episode. For the non-lawyers out there, a sidebar is typically a private conversation in a courtroom between the judge and lawyers that is off the record. In other words, they are reserved for delicate conversations that the jury or the general members of the public in the gallery shouldn't hear, and they won't appear on the court transcript after the fact. As an example, in the Lincoln Lawyer TV show that we discussed in episodes 1 and 3, and we will be discussing at least one more time in the future, there are a lot of examples of sidebars in the courtroom scenes where the lawyers discuss objections to a line of questioning or evidentiary concerns, such as when certain evidence wasn't provided in discovery to the other side, and even sometimes the judges would call up lawyers for a sidebar to discuss their own concerns with what's going on in the trial. For our podcast, we will be releasing sidebars occasionally on off weeks for a variety of reasons, including to discuss listener feedback, present some clips from upcoming or past episodes that were cut for time, or maybe even to have short conversations or interviews that don't necessarily need a full episode. And shout out to our host, Jeff, for coming up with the name Sidebar. We continue to be as nerdy as possible here on the Not So Grand Jury. For this sidebar, I'm going to do two things. First, I would like to thank the 3 listeners who gave us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. We obviously very much appreciate any feedback, and especially 5 stars. Unfortunately, none of these listeners left an actual review, so we can't thank you specifically by name. Hopefully, these aren't just the reviews from our respective mothers, but if they are, thanks, Mom. And hopefully, if they're from other people out there, fantastic. We appreciate you giving us reviews. And for anyone who hasn't given us reviews yet, we highly encourage you to leave feedback, reviews, or even propose movies or shows that you think we should discuss on our podcast in future episodes. Please do so in the podcast app of your choosing. You may email us at notsograndjury@gmail.com or go to our Instagram, which is finally up and running. We would love to actually respond to your feedback and maybe even interact with you on it. Second, next week we will be discussing the Shawshank Redemption, and for the first time we brought on a guest. Her name is Andrea Fenster. Andrea is the Prisoner's Rights Dunn Legal Fellow with the ACLU of Virginia, which made her the perfect guest to discuss Shawshank. We very much thank Andrea for taking the time to join us and hang out with us for a few hours to discuss a fantastic movie. We also thank Matt Callahan, one of the supervising attorneys at the ACLU, for connecting us with Andrea and bringing her onto our podcast. We ended up talking with Andrea for about 2 hours, and well, we didn't think you wanted to listen to a full 2-hour podcast, so we did have to shorten it a little bit. As a quick treat before our full episode next week, we wanted to offer a few clips from the raw episode that we ended up cutting for length. In the first clip, Andrea discusses prisoner labor as it relates to the killing of Tommy Williams, Gil Bellows' character in Shawshank. And in the second clip, Andrea responds to Jeff's question on, in her job, how she handles the situation of knowing there are certain violations being committed against prisoners, but she hasn't received a specific complaint from a specific prisoner or from a potential plaintiff, and how she handles that. Please enjoy, and you can look forward to having Mike and Jeff back next week, along with Andrea, to discuss the Shawshank Redemption.
When they kill Bill Bellows' character, it's surprising to me, like, what are the incentives to do that? Why kill someone who has information about getting someone out of prison? And we talk frequently about decarceration. And I mean, we in the general, like royal we. And if we want decarceration, like the warden should theoretically be happy that he's getting it. Like the warden shouldn't have any sort of role in him getting out. He shouldn't be happy. He shouldn't be sad about it. And what's surprising is, I think that actually ties into some prison jobs and prison labor today, because I want to start with the fact that like most prison jobs support the prison itself. So it's things like custodial jobs, things like working in the kitchen, things like fixing the roof on a building. There's a very small percentage of jobs that are in the community. So like when they were doing all of the work where the warden was skimming off the top, there's an even smaller percentage of prison jobs that happen for state industries. And then there's this, like, I think a lot of people get really upset about prison labor and the products that we buy and sell. But the truth is that only, I think it's like 1% of people who are incarcerated have jobs working for private companies, and they pay way better. The average, not salary isn't the right word, the average hourly pay is literally less than $1 for people in prison. I believe it's on average between 14 and 63 cents. And because who is benefiting the most off of this? The state, the prisons. So there are 6.5% of people who work in state-owned businesses. They earn up to $1.41 per hour, but those jobs generate $2 billion in goods and services for the state.
On average.
Yeah. It just, in California, they use prison labor. They use people in prisons to fight fires. That is a vital service in California. And the state isn't really feeling the real cost of incarcerating these people because they're not paying them. They are getting essentially free labor. I saw that they spend less than 1% of their budgets on paying people for their jobs. And people have said in the past, like, the reason that they don't want to decarcerate is because they need people to fuel the prison industry. And I want to be clear that it is largely the state. I think we think a lot about private prisons and private companies using prison labor. And the people who are benefiting the most are the public. And that sucks.
My question for you related to this is how, when you know that there are violations happening in a system, but no one has come to you who's in a position to bring that case in court, how do you approach that problem? Because for me, it's incredibly difficult to do the kind of outreach you need to build a case that you can actually bring in court when it involves prisoners.
Yeah, I have to give credit to my team because I think so much of it is forming real relationships with people. One of the guys on our policy team, Sean, he's formerly incarcerated, and Sean is just the greatest. He knows everybody. He knows their moms, and he's put us in touch with so many people now just because he's hanging out with people. He's talking to people. He's doing the work. And to be honest, the other thing that happens is we'll be on the phone with someone talking about, whatever our case is, and we'll start asking questions and maybe say something about oh, has this happened to you? And they'll say, no, but it happened to my buddy. And they'll put us in touch with them. And that has happened, gosh, just countless times, especially with some of our bigger cases, our class actions, where we know something is happening and we'll just ask people, has that happened to you? And they'll say, no, but my buddy, my buddy's right here. Let me put him on the phone. Yeah, that's really fun when our class members are like, oh, the other class plaintiff is right here. Do you want to talk to him? And I'm like, I'm good. Thank you.
The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by Morwapi LLC.
The opinions expressed in the Not So Grand Jury are those of the hosts themselves and not of their respective employers.
The theme music for the Not So Grand Jury is from Gustav Holst's Jupiter and is in the public domain.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, if you want to suggest future movies, or even if you want to offer corrections, you can email us at notsograndjury@gmail.com or message us on any of our social media accounts.
The Not So Grand Jury is copyright 2024, all rights reserved.